it's also going to act as a comm relay once it's finished with that. If we put enough delta V on it, we can scan multiple bodies because it needs about, I think, 8,000-9,000 tend to be safe to go ahead and get to Minimus. So what we can do is we can get it to Minimus, scan Minimus, and then we can send it back into Kerbin and scan Kerbin as well. Now the thing about it is, to scan things, you need to be in a polar orbit. And those, if you're not on that inclination to begin with, can be quite difficult. So I'm not sure if I want to just go straight to Kerbin and then try and do Minimus and the Moon in one round, and use 2 spacecraft to kill 3 stones, or if I wanted, yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. So Kinship 3, that's saved. We're going to do a new one, and we're going to start with the Providine OKTO, which popped up way down here, so we're going to go down. Going to zoom in, and so now we're doing satellite, so I'm not going to fast forward through this rocket build, at least not the first part of it. Once I get to the rocket part of it, I might, but so we're going to start, and that's going to be our core always. And then we're going to go to science, and we're always going to need to have the Kerbal engineering system. Actually, that's not true. Once you start getting probes that are advanced enough, the Kerbal engineering system will be included inside of them, and so you won't have to put this little part on in order to take advantage of the Kerbal engineering system. And then I'm going to put this on here. I'm going to put it over here to the side. Actually, I want it centered, right? And then I'm going to, and that's because I have this part on here, and I don't want it attached to that part. I want it attached to that part. And so I'm going to just go over here to my move, my displace, and turn my snap off, and move it over until it looks like it's just about even. And these nice white and reds actually give you a perfect little thing. Then I'm going to go ahead and right click and extend. And the reason I'm going to do that is so that when I put my other things on there, I know that they're not going to run into it, because while that's not going to actually create issues in game, I'd like to make it as realistic as possible in that sense. We always, even if it doesn't call for it, even if there doesn't seem to be any good reason for it, we are going to always, if I can, there we go. We're always going to put a thermometer on there, and we're always going to put an ABS device on there. And the reason for that is this. There are always going to be contracts to get science data from the space around and then fill in the blank. And if these we're going to just park those in orbit once we're done with the scan part of it, and we can always go back to them and right click, do the thermometer, and then send in that data, and we get the contract without actually having to send another spacecraft up there. So we can mine science and reduce our science grind by just a little bit by making sure that we have those things on there. We also need to go to our utility, and these are a little bit large for this kind of a satellite, so we're just going to stick with these photovoltaic panels, and we're just going to literally do 8 of them right there like that, right? Okay, now normally what I would do, oh, I got this. I got the rechargeable battery bank, so I'm going to stick that and that on there. And then I also need, and see that's clipping a little bit. That's not going to be a big deal. I know I opened this up so I wouldn't have clipping, but at some point it's unavoidable. Now what I can do, just for the sake of my own self, is I can stick it on there like this, right? And that can be considered pretty realistic. Now our thermometer is kind of hidden in there, and so I might want to move that, because it's almost going to be impossible to be able to right click on and take a reading from. So I'm just going to stick it right there. We also need to make sure we always have humiditron But we also want to, I mean, I always put these on there no matter what, just because it gives you local communication capability. And I'm just going to stick it like right there like that, just for the sake of saying it's a little bit more aerodynamic. I could even have brought it in more, but that's good enough. And then one of these Communicatron, I just need the one. Nope, not three, one. You can do two, but I'm just going to do the one, and then when that opens up, it'd be like that. And that's kind of funky. I don't know. When we put our let's see. What does this look like? See, that's big. What I can do is I can go to my procedural, hopefully, and can we reduce the diameter? Yeah, so we can reduce the diameter here. And we don't have the small little engines. That's going to create miniaturization, but we do have these little liquid fuel engines, which are ginormous compared to our craft, right? The other thing that we could do is we could just make this cone, and then stick that on there like that. And look, that gives us 2,000 delta V because we're moving so little mass in our satellite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that back to a normal orientation, and I'm just going to stick that on because there's going to be no need to stage in between them because we're not bringing this back. And so once this fuel runs out, that satellite's dead in the water anyway, and so there's no need to decouple. There's no need to add a decoupler there. All right, and so what I think I'm going to do here, as I'm thinking about it, is I'm actually going to turn it this way. I'm still going to have two, like that, and then I'm going to go ahead and retract this, and that'll retract back in. And so that's our little satellite. Now, do we have... No, so we have all these fairings, but we don't have a fairing base to go with them. That's a mod that is incomplete, so those don't really count. So we're looking for the in-house fairings, which we don't have yet. So we're just going to have to go up into space like this, which is not ideal. Normally I would like to put a decoupler on there, and then I'll put a fairing around it just to make it aerodynamically sound. We're not going to be able to do that, so we're just going to have to deal with what we got, and that's okay at the beginning. So then the next step is going to be to go ahead and put a decoupler on there. And I also want to change the texture of this to be something like that. Seems realistic, right? And so that's 2,000. I'm going to put another one of these Terrier engines on there just for the sake of having enough fuel to maybe go ahead and do a second body. That's 4,000 delta V right there, and the same amount of mass that one of our normal spaceships would normally take. And I have extra battery power. I have the ability to get electric charge from the photovoltaics, and yeah, so that's good. At this point, y'all seen this, so I'm just going to fast forward through this. So I'll see you on the launch pad. So we're on the launch pad. I'm going to M, go ahead and get this up. And this time we're going to do something different because we want to get into a polar orbit and rather than a equatorial orbit. And so a polar orbit going over the poles is not as intuitive as you would think. You would think that when you launch, you just go straight north or straight south. But that's not quite the case because you are spinning with the planet. So your natural trajectory is going to be something like that, even if you just went straight up or straight north. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to slightly go west a little bit in your trajectory. And so west is 270, so we're either going to come down this way if we're going north or up that way if we're going south. I tend to typically go north just because that's what I know, so I am going to try and go along this vector here, right about where these numbers are. It's not an exact science, but it'll be close, and it'll be close enough. So I'm going to T, Z, and long. And besides changing your vector, all these other numbers and how I look at those will pretty much stay the same. I'm going to keep it going just straight up for a little bit. I'm going to try and rotate my vessel just to make it easier for me, so I'm only having to push one key in order to alter my trajectory. We're going about 50 at 500 meters altitude, so I'm going to start my turn. And now I'm just pushing the W key. And we're going to leave that at that for a little bit until we get to about 7,000 meters. Until we run out of solid fuel, because at solid fuel I want to be going in my prograde direction as close as possible so that I don't encounter any collision issues and have a rud. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. I need to stay close to my prograde vector, but I want to move it as much as I can before I have to. And so that's good. That's perfect. Is that good clear of the staging? Stage 3. Now, stage 3 isn't so clear of itself, but that's okay. Already at our altitude, so I can already start this burn. This is much more relative for me compared to the last ascent that we tried. So I'm going to stay here right about 30 degrees while we're at 30 kilometers up to about 40 kilometers. Then 40 kilometers, we'll just slowly bring it down, and we're going to be here about 55 kilometers. So we can just start tapping the W key. Just give it a little tap, tap, tap. See my orbit? You notice my orbit changed, and I'm not even, I went a little bit too far, so I'm not going straight north. So that's okay. I'm just going to head straight north regardless, try and alter my trajectory a little bit. And I'm going a little bit too fast on my turn. Try and change my prograde to north. All I'm doing this is going to be easier now than if I took it up into space. It's going to be more efficient to do it now. that's getting closer to north, which is good. And it would be on a almost exactly polar orbit. I'm at 55, so I should also, of course, isn't. Still need to pull it towards the north vector. It's almost there. We also need to keep an eye on my apoapse over here, and that's the stage. I've run out of staging. We'll go ahead and burn this a little bit quicker than I wanted it. But I pushed the wrong button. That sucks. That sucks. Okay, I'm going to revert flight, but I'm not going to make you watch that, so I will see you all in polar orbit. Oh, suck. Okay, so our orbit, well, it's not quite an orbit yet, but we have a positive per apsis, is polar, and it's actually very, very nicely polar. Um, I did a good job if I don't say so myself, and I do. Anyway, I if you notice my apoapsis, I went up to 145. Actually, I would have gone up to 150 if that stage hadn't run out, but that's close enough because I'm doing a scan, and so I don't want to do a minimal orbit. And so I'm just gonna keep this. I want my altitude to be about 150, maybe even as high as 350. And so having that increased apoapsis is just more appropriate for the orbit that I'm going for. But here we are. We are just needed to wait till we get up to the apoapsis, and then we can circularize our orbit and see what we're going on here. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do, even though we're not there yet, is I'm going to start my radar scan. And I'm also going to go to this little satellite icon, and this is the scan planetary mapping. And if you also right click, you can see the scan set altitude is ideal. So we're already at something that can be done. But that doesn't mean it's ideal. Ideal, according to the scan set thing, means that it's capable of scanning. Ideal, according to me, is when you go across, you're gonna as this satellite comes up, it's gonna go over and then come back down, and then go over and then go back up, and you want it to go back up in a swath next to the one that you just came. So you don't want to leave any gaps there, but you want to go over as much as possible without leaving gaps, and have as much coverage as possible so that you can do this as quickly as possible. I still don't know what the exact altitude is to do that, but I'm pretty sure it's closer to like 300 kilometers up. So when I do my burn, my burn at the apoapsis, I'm gonna go ahead and push my apoapsis up to 300, and then we're gonna push this out to 300, and then at 300 we'll push it back up and make it a perfectly circular orbit at 300 kilometers. And I might be doing that a little bit higher. It might be closer to this, but you know what I mean. You get the idea. So it's scanning, and you can see that as this line comes up, it will update the scan. And we're just going to go ahead and time warp to our apoapsis. And we want to go ahead and come back to, oh no, that's retrograde. We don't want to do that. And that's not, there we go. And that's what we want. We want prograde. Right? And so we're going to go ahead and hit it. Keep an eye on this. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Alright, 300 there. And then when we get up to here, I'll do the same thing and push this paraapsis up. And so I'll just fast forward to there. Swing my ship around. And 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, 30. Alright, 303, 302. That's about as good as it's going to get. Now I'm going to double click on Kerbin to keep the focus on Kerbin, and then I'm going to max out my time warp 1000, And, you know, I clearly did not get this perfect. Um, and that's okay. I'm just going to leave it for now anyway. And we're just going to time warp and let this go now. Even if I didn't time warp, but I just went back to the Space Center and I started doing another mission, this would continue to progress. And when we came back to it, it would be at whatever progression is based on the time that passed. So I don't have to sit here and watch this time warp the whole time. I'm choosing to, for the sake of letting you see letting you see what's going on with the poles. And if you notice, my electric charge is going down, but I have enough batteries that it never goes down fully. I've gotten my contract because it's only asked for 85 or 80%, I don't know. Maybe only a 75% scan. I've done that. But I typically want to have a 100% scan. And it's going to be a while because, again, this is not an ideal altitude. 300 is not it. I don't know if it should be closer or further away. I haven't spent the time. There are people that, in fact, the guy that created this mod gives you like the formula, but it's kind of complicated and you know, a little bit too much work for me. I love playing this game, but I'm kind of lazy. I mean, it's a game. I want to have fun. I don't want to have to do super hardcore math. Now that's me. If math is your thing, by all means, do the calculations and make it happen, and maybe post what the ideal altitude is. And, you know, each body is different too. So here I'm at 300 kilometers, and that's going to give me this map. But if I go to the moon or to Minimus, 300 kilometers is going to be probably too far away. I'm going to be more like 150 for those, or maybe 120. I don't know. So that's one thing to also take into account, is just because it's the right altitude for Kerbin doesn't mean it's the right altitude for Minimus. And in fact, every single body is going to have a slightly different altitude, ideal altitude. Alright, so we're at 90%. I'm going to call that done. I'm going to slow it down, and I'm going to press M, come back, and so now I'm going to analyze data. And the more closer to 100% that you are, the more this number is going to be. And I'm going to go ahead and transmit that science data. That's going to give me a lot of good science. Alright, and then just for good measure, I will do a test a live beep, an extra 2.3 science, can't hurt, right? And then I'm going to log temperature. I don't get any science because I've been here to do that before, but let's look. We got over 3,497 delta V. Now, I could leave this in orbit and let it get to 100. I'm not going to do that. You know, I can maybe try and alter the orbit, but let's try and go to the moon. And the reason I say the moon and not Minimus is, how do I make that my target? It's not letting me. It's focused on the moon, but I want to make that my target. It's not letting me do that. Oh, I bet you it's because I haven't upgraded my what do you call it? The radar dishes at the at the Space Center. That's why it's not going to let me set that target, I guess. I don't know. That might be completely false. But anyway, I think I'm going to call it a day at this episode. The next episode, my intention is that I want to get this to the moon so that I can go ahead and scan the moon with this one spacecraft. And who knows, if I'm lucky, it'll have enough delta V that I can also send it to Mimas. Now, typically, I would want to go to Mimas first and then go to the moon because the moon is a much easier capture. But you know, it might be interesting to make that feat happen the other way around. In the meantime, it can scan here. I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.